Today I painted so much that my knees are trembling from being on my feet, or maybe from painting too much. And I've painted my portrait. I've given my eyes the shapes of leaves. These 2 leaves told me constantly, yes, yes.
I think great artists elude labels, and Gorky is a great artist. Labels have been put on him, and I think they all make some sense. He's often seen as somebody who makes the bridge from surrealism into abstract expressionism. But he never was an orthodox surrealist, and he never was an orthodox abstract expressionist. I think he was Gorky.
I was 19 when I first met Gorky.
For Gorky, the real center of his work is in the studio, and he had a couple of great studios at different times in New York.
He took me to his studio, and it was so big and so vast and empty. 3 chairs and a round table and this wonderful big easel, great big one, like a crucifix, and a big window coming right down from the ceiling. We had a room on the side where he kept all his paintings. The first thing he showed me was his mother and himself. That painting that's in the Whitney Museum. I guess his mother must have loved him a lot. He lost her when he was very young. I don't think he was very far in his teens. You see, his mother was very beautiful, and she wanted him to be something special. And she took him to a marble seat and said, "You must be a poet." Poetry, you see, was the beautiful thing for her, and he felt she had given him a mission.
Gorky always said his mother died of starvation. Because they were beggars. I mean, they had nothing. But there were enormous lots of them, of Armenian refugees from Turkish Armenia over the border into Russia.
He told me about him leaving with his mother and his sister, Bartush. He told me about they had to leave their farm.
They had to walk all the way to Yerevan.
They had to leave one place and then another, and torn apart, torn from their mother, torn from home, walking around Mount Ararat. They got into the town, they were protected by the missionaries up to a point, and then the missionaries could no more. And the missionaries had to go, and the Armenians had to flee.
I was taken away from my little village when I was 5 years old, yet all my vital memories are of these first years. These were the days when I smelt the bread, I saw my first red poppy, the moon, the innocent seeing. Since then, these memories have become iconography, the shapes, even the colors, millstone, red earth, yellow wheat field, apricots.
I mean, just in this painting, you know, we can see so many sources from Fayum portraits, the Egyptian period, to Ingres, the great French 19th century portrait painter, Byzantine icons. I mean, we should remember he's in New York, so he's got the Metropolitan Museum at his doorstep.
He used to go to the Metropolitan with his easel and paint there. He learnt really by, you call it imitation, I suppose. He was totally eclectic, you know, something from everywhere.
I like Uccello, Grunwald, Ingres, the drawings and sketches for paintings of Seurat. What about Papa Cézanne? And that man, Pablo Picasso.
Gorky was a great self-taught student of Cézanne, of Picasso. He worked through it hard. It took him a long time, but I think it paid off. All that work, he found himself through all of that.
He did. He worked very hard. He scraped. He started again. I mean, layer upon layer, painting upon painting half the time, as he didn't have much money to buy canvas. Sometimes I'd go to bed and there was a beautiful painting on marvelous colors on these. I'd get up in the morning and it was absolutely, completely changed. Turned brown and everything that was bright has turned dark, and it was quite extraordinary.
In New York, he's hanging out with artists who have a lot of visual culture. He was part of this group known as the Three Musketeers, along with Stuart Davis and John Graham, and Willem de Kooning was very close to them as well.
One of the most extraordinary moments was spending the night with de Kooning in his studio, and he monologued for eight hours. He talked at us, he didn't talk with us. Because he said that my father's ghost stood behind him as he painted, and he had imaginary conversations with my father as he painted.
And de Kooning's relationship was that of a younger brother to an elder brother. I mean, when Gorky bossed him around, which he did, as a story he told of running into the street unexpectedly, and de Kooning was almost run down by a car because he was following so closely behind Gorky that he didn't notice the car. And de Kooning said, "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" And Gorky just walked on. You know, he was just trying to kill his best friend, that's all. So he'd walk around the streets of New York with his friends, and he'd say things like that were aesthetic. That is to say, the signs pointing, and textures, like he liked this kind of thing. A paint on the street, and tarmac, and he loved fire hydrant. He said the fire hydrants were like cathedrals. It's more beautiful than anything made by the hand of man, is what he said.
Matthew, what about these signs on the street? That's the sort of thing he would have liked.
Well, this is natural art, this lovely dribble here. This gives you the texture of something. And these give you very hard shapes, which you delineate. We're talking about the 1930s here, because Gorky in the 1940s is something completely different. 1930s, he was living in the city. His painting was totally urban obsessed. See, this sort of thing, that has a humanity to it. It's somebody asking for something. These sort of textures. Then you go up to here, this kind of paint, do you see up here? That is incredibly like Gorky of the 1930s, where once he's got the composition straight, you can have incredible freedom within the contours that you've made. This is accumulated by chance, after all. Some official, some painter employed by the municipal council has to paint it. He's not a painter, but at the same time he is working with paint, and it does have an accumulated texture which is human.
Before I met him, he had a terrible crisis. Well, I suppose when everybody did. All through the 30s, it was a terrible moment. Nobody had jobs. You know, people had nothing to eat. Men were lying on benches covered with newspapers and scrounging in rubbish bags and things like that for food.
The WPA and all of the federal programs in the New Deal they were keeping these artists alive, really, during the Depression. So Gorky got a salary for painting. And Gorky did some major murals.
My subject matter is directional. American plains are horizontal. New York City, which I live in, is vertical. In the middle of my picture stands a column which symbolizes the determination of the American nation. A plastic operation is imperative, and that is why in the first panel of my Newark Airport mural, Activities on the Field, I dissected an airplane into its constituent parts. An airplane is composed of a variety of shapes and forms, and I have used such elemental forms as a rudder, a wing, a wheel, and a searchlight. These forms I have used in paralyzing disproportions in order to impress upon the spectator the miraculous new vision of our time. Recently I've been well and I've been working, and my way of working is changing, and for this reason I always feel extremely anxious. I'm not contented, and who knows, perhaps one day I will not be satisfied with my work. I want to attain works which are more personal and clean.
Maro had just been born, and how was I going to live in that flat, in that studio? I suggested to my mother, who'd just bought a farmhouse in Virginia. And so I said, well, of course, we could come down and help you. Gorky can dig in the garden, and I can cook, and so on. And so that struck us a very good bargain. We'd go in the spring, and we'd watch the fall turning. Because we went back the next summer and the next summer. Gorky has been thrashing over 2 particular canvases, and now having ravaged and worn them down like an angry sea, he has left them to go out and draw. He's sitting perched on his stool out on the side of the hill, sitting for hours without seeming to move. Today he's heartbroken, because the farmer has cut the weeds to let the grass grow for the cows. Poor dear, he always gets slugged. He stood on the hill watching the tractor down in the bottomland, moaning, "They are cutting down the Raphaels." He fell in love with the grasses and the cows and the trees and the weeds, especially as the weeds changed. I mean, he couldn't get over the beauty of the milkweed. What was so exciting about it was that he didn't know what he was doing himself. He'd come back and he'd say, "Can you see this?" "Well, I'm looking at it," I'd say. "It's wonderful, it's extraordinary. It doesn't matter, does it, if you don't recognize anything?" I said, "No, I don't. I can recognize shapes, but I don't know what they refer to."
The forest there are big lakes and torrents with clear running water, rushing through the stones and rocks, and beside the torrents are enormous cypress trees, as still as sentinels with their heads in the cloud. They seem to press upwards against the blue of the sky to stop the bright blue sky from one day falling down.
This was on his easel in the barn when I came to see him. You see, he'd been working from the drawings, and then suddenly he dismissed the drawing. It was completely free. He'd done it sort of, I think, 2 or 3 days. "Oh," I said, "it was splendid. You're off." I just felt he was. He'd found his way out of the drawing. You could see how nature was alive to him. I mean, he really didn't see what I saw at all. He saw things in it. And he looked at the spaces between things as much as he looked at the object itself, like things that he might have seen in his dreams or imagination, or I don't know. Always a mixture of his early memories and his new perceptions.
Gorky would have painted this probably in the summer, and I think you can feel the climate. It's dripping, and he's in fact letting the paint drip. I mean, there's certainly a lot of experimentation going on in New York with different ways of applying paint, but this kind of very thin dripping paint is, Gorky really makes it his signature in a number of works. Out of that dripping, all these images arise, and we can see a lot of things in that painting, and some of them are just free associations that we might have. And not only the present countryside, but Armenia, the past, colors that he remembered, smells. That's where surrealism comes back into play, this idea that in the act of painting, things arise from the unconscious in the painter, also in the viewer.
In a sense, the surrealists liberated him, in the sense that they're the first ones who paid attention to him. Breton wanted him to explain about it. What did he see when he painted, you know? So that when Breton came to dinner, I'll tell, we'll have lovely big globe artichokes. The artichoke turned out to be frightfully useful because Breton's best subject was analogies. Gorky picked up an artichoke leaf and he said, I don't see a leaf when I look at a leaf. This artichoke leaf, it's an owl. And he held up the artichoke leaf, and we all agreed it was the perfect outline of an owl. And so that was thrilling to Breton. The artichoke leaf as an owl became the title of one of his paintings. There was so much feeling in it, and the feeling came through to one. Having his own child, his own house, and that trip to the country unstuck him. It was a gigantic movement.
I think Gorky is really back in many ways. He's really back on the map. I think a lot of artists are looking at Gorky now as a kind of liberating figure who doesn't fit into one camp or another and gives permission to try a lot of things. He had this huge, broad visual culture, but he had a real personal drive to express something original.